aware of. Emma.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to remind everyone, please note that the public section of the meeting will be recorded and published online for public access after the meeting. Can all attendees please mute their microphone when they're not speaking? And we have apologies from Shona Oman-Smith. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. Do any members have any declarations of interest or transparency statements that they would like to make at this point? Nope. Okay. There are none. Okay. 2.1, we have no exempt business. So we can move on to 3.1, the minute of the previous meeting, 13th of June 2023. Is that acceptable as an accurate record? Or are there any problems with the accuracy? Okay, we're all content. So is the minute approved? Yes, good.
Yep, agreed.
Excellent. 3.2, the business planner. Does anyone have any particular questions about the business planner? Paul.
Yeah, I've just got to highlight a couple of changes that have been brought to our attention. On line 20, there was the quarterly performance report coming from Alison, but that just the timing of the committees and the timing of the month ends, obviously we kind of make that committee, so it was a case of moving that to the April committee, if that's okay. And then the one that's in for April on line 28, again, just with the timings, we would want to move that onto the May or June committees whenever the dates are arranged. Okay. And also on line 32, the qualities outcomes report, that actually goes to the IGB in April, and it's planned to come to the RAPC in either October and November, depending on when the committee date. So just those three changes if possible.
Right. Okay. On the equalities and on the equalities and equalities outcomes, that is coming to this committee in November.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then it rotates and then back to IJB in the following April. Is that right? Is that how it works?
I think it goes annually. Maybe Alison could dip in here, but I think annually it goes to the IJB in April.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So it's due to go to IJB in April and to come to RAPC in October and November time, depending on the timing of the committee. So you will see it, and it did go to IJB last April. You will see it at RAPC in November. Then it'll go back to IJB next April, and then back to RAPC the following October, November, as I say, whenever it's scheduled.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a regular cycle that is explained in the business planner. So thanks for the additional information. It's coming to this committee. The qualities and equalities outcomes is coming to this committee in November. And I just wondered, will it reflect ongoing legislative changes? I understand that there's quite a lot of law reform underway in relation to human rights legislation. So will it reflect that ongoing changing landscape?
So what we're due to do is to report on our performance against our equality outcomes. So that will be the main thrust of the report. But you're right, there are some changes ongoing. Some are enacted at the minute and others are still in the pipeline. So we will make reference to one specific change that has already been enacted that we will need to pick up going forward. And in fact, you'll see some commentary on that in the Chief Officer's report going to IJB in October.
Yeah, that's fine. Well, it's good to know that there is that agility in addressing the changing environment, all in an improving direction. I mean, there's legislation on human rights in relation to children's rights, for example, which is obviously relevant for the IJB and a lot of other activity, which is good. Can I just ask a very quick question about lines 13 and 14? so about justice social work. So there's a line 14 is the performance report. Just looking for clarity on how that will relate to the delivery plan. How do they interact? Claire.
Hi, the delivery plan is our 3-year plan on what our vision and objectives are for the service. The performance framework are the identified KPIs. So the delivery plan gives an update on this year, but the delivery framework, the performance framework gives the KPIs in terms of the performance, in terms of the data. So that will back up our delivery plan, so to speak, and that will come to the next one. It was supposed to come at the same time, as you know, but that will come to the next one. So that just gives you the data that backs up the activity of justice.
Right, that's helpful. Thank you. It's just that the business planner mentions that there were anomalies in recording performance data.
Yes.
In trying to align with Scottish Government performance.
Yeah.
Monitoring, is that right?
Yes, that's correct. So as you'll appreciate, the move to D365 was a huge piece of work. So some of the half the data was in Care First that we had to extrapolate, and some of the system of D365 and trying to marry up that too has just been a bit more complicated. So we wanted to be absolutely sure our data was correct and cleansed before we submitted it. We have now just yesterday submitted it to government for our annual return, and then we'll get the report to next committee. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much for that, just for clarifying that. Thanks for that. Yeah, could I also ask another question later on in the business plan, or line 44? There's a referral on staff sickness absence rates at Royal Cornwall Hospital. Is it possible to have just some very brief background as to the reasons for that referral? I mean, there's a narrative there. Will the report be produced at and when? And just some basic information would be useful. I see it's referred from the Clinical and Care Governance Committee from August.
Yeah. Okay.
Claire.
I was just going to come in and say I'm not really sure of the background to this, unless Paul has. I mean, I could find out for you from Judith and let you know.
Yeah, I was just getting the exact same. Yeah.
Okay, that would be helpful. Thank you. Just so that we know, and that's scheduled for next April. So that's fine. Thank you very much. Anything else on the business planner? Okay, we're content with the business planner as it is. Thank you. The next, we go on to item 5.1, our first substantive item of business. Would I be looking to Claire or to Val to make any introductory comments?
Morning. Morning. Yeah, I'm happy to present the report if that's okay. Morning, everybody. So this report is basically to update members and to provide assurance about progress in relation to next steps regarding the inspection of adult sport and protection, as was identified previously in report to committee back in August last year. So you'll recall that there was a joint inspection of adult sport and protection in Aberdeen in spring 2022, and the report was published last June. The findings on the whole were very positive, as you'll see they're summarised in this report in sections 3.3 and 3.4. Obviously, there were some areas for improvement in 3.5. These were all areas that we were kind of already aware of and were in our improvement plan to a greater or lesser extent. So that's good news, I guess. So in terms of the next steps, the improvement plan was reviewed, so to take account of the findings, and that was in close collaboration with the care inspectorate, link inspector, who is on the Adult Protection Committee, and that was sent off to the care inspectorate. The improvement work has been ongoing since then and has really progressed and has been overseen on a regular basis by the Adult Protection Committee. And I'd say the link inspector is on that committee. So there are subcommittees of the APC which have progressed that work, reporting on a regular basis back to the Adult Protection Committee, and it has really moved forward. Much of it has been completed. The engagement with staff took place following the inspection and continues to take place on an ongoing basis. There are regular peer support sessions attended by our council officers where practice issues are discussed, including those which did stem from the inspection. And as mentioned in the report, we held our multi-agency information sessions with stakeholders last autumn, which were well attended and had positive feedback. So I don't know if anybody has any questions about the report. Thank you.
Great to take any questions. Can I just mention? So thank you very much for that introduction. I think that it's very positive. There's mention there of ongoing peer support sessions. So I'm assuming that that's in a spirit of continuous improvement, of trying to make sure that the lessons from the inspection become embedded. I'm just wondering, will the care inspectorate be coming back, or are they content that the findings are being duly actioned?
The care inspectorate. I mean, we have the representation on the APC, so we've got that ongoing link. But other than that, they're not specifically coming back. Sorry, Claire, you want to come in?
Claire.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, so they won't be coming back. I have regular meetings with the link inspector, so I update her on the work of our improvement plan, and they're satisfied and assured that we have completed all the work we need to. So they're not coming back as such to do another formal inspection. It is just a case of that they link in with the APC. They have meetings with myself, so that, and they know that it's ongoing improvement work that we're going to be doing. So
good, that's great. Okay, thank you very much. I think that I mean, it was good to see that there are real strengths within adult protection. I think that's really positive. And I mean, a visit from the care inspector is always something that is constructive. So and it's good to see that there was that very positive engagement with the improvement plan. So that gives a lot of reassurance. Anything else? We're asked to note the update, including the next steps. Is the committee content with that, with those recommendations? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Happy with that.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Thanks. Thank you, Val and Claire. The next one is 5.2, the internal audit report from Jamie. Jamie's here. Anything to comment, Jamie?
Thank you very much, Chair. No, this is our standard update report providing the committee with details of the progress of the internal audit plan and the follow-up of recommendations. Happy to take any questions.
Okay. I think it's very straightforward. Hussein.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for the report. It's just a question on page 27, and forgive me because I'm still relatively new in this. On page 27, it states IJB compliant handling. Can I assume that should be compliance, or is that a term that I'm not familiar with?
Mm-hmm.
I'm guessing it's just a typo, but I thought I'd ask.
Thank you. Unless I'm reading the wrong thing, and it's probably me in my numerous reports, I think it's complaint handling. So that's the review that we are carrying out at the moment at the request of the IJB. That'll be presented to the committee probably the next session.
Perfect. That answers my question. Thanks a lot.
Well spotted. there's the two moderate risks there. I think they speak for themselves. I think that's fine. So can we agree the recommendations in that report? Yeah. Okay, good.
Yep, agreed.
Thank you very much, Jamie. The next item of 5.3 is the internal audit report on adults with incapacities. Jamie, would you wish to say anything to introduce this?
Thank you, Chair. So with this audit, the objective was to review the controls in place with regards to the management of funds on behalf of clients with incapacity. And this is a review of adult social care services that the Council delivers on behalf of the Integration Joint Board. If I can state, this review did not look at the actual provision of care, that would be for the Care Inspectorate, and instead we looked at the funds management, a very important aspect of service provision for adults with incapacity. Overall, we've concluded the control arrangements present a major net risk and have only been able to take limited assurance. Areas of control are in development but have yet to be fully implemented. And the key issues found as highlighted in the report were around out-of-date procedures leading to inconsistent operations, incomplete and inconsistent record keeping across both finance, the care management system and the care management files, issues with regards to intervention and appointeeship, weaknesses with financial controls, specifically around cash withdrawals, banking and reconciliations, and then finally record keeping for funds management. Internal Audit has worked with management to address the noted risks. Can I thank them for their engagement, especially during the finalisation of the report. Recommendations have been made to the noted risks, which management has agreed to as part of a time-bound action plan. This was discussed with internal audit and is considered proportionate in the wider context of ongoing work and recognising the need to consider flexibility and efficiency as well as just control. And I think this should give the committee further assurance. And then finally from me, implementation of the recommendations will be reported back to committee as part of our internal audit follow-up process. Thank you and welcome any questions.
Many thanks for that. I was very concerned about this report. Some very worrying practices have been highlighted, and that I think that demonstrates the value of the internal audit. I'm going to take in Councillor Cook at this point. John, do you have a question?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I mean, like you, I was kind of somewhat disappointed, should we say, to read the report. I mean, quite a lot of reports that we see from internal audit are usually kind of a balance between this was good, this needs a bit of improvement, this was okay. This one reads a bit like a catalogue of errors. So I wonder, Jamie, could you comment on whether what we're looking at here is basically system and process failures, or is it human error, or some combination thereof?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor. I believe it's the former. So if I look at other controls designed effectively, they're not. And then are they operating effectively? No, they're not. So human error will always be a part of it, especially when kind of manual handling of cash. But I do believe this to be much more of a control issue.
Thanks for that. So yeah, if I can just kind of follow up with a couple of more questions. So you're saying to us that management is now working with you to fix the issues. Do we know what the kind of time scale is? I think there was a comment on, I think it's on page 35 maybe, which refers to timescales. I think it says timescales below, but there weren't any timescales below unless I was misreading it. So what is the kind of timescale for fixing this sort of stuff?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. I'll maybe, if through yourself, Chair, let the service come in, because I know they've done a lot of work. But just to kind of answer those 2 points from me. Firstly, we made 6 recommendations, and the implementation dates range from around January 2024 to May, June 2024. But what I would say is management really did work with internal audit. So when it comes to kind of adults with incapacity and certainly the care aspects, it'd be easy just to say, okay, we'll do this, we'll do that, but you really have to look at the actual efficiencies, the controls, be flexible. So I think management have put together a plan which addresses those risks within a kind of time-bound period that I was content with. But again, through yourself, Chair, I would welcome the services comments.
Claire, thanks for that. Claire, did you want to come at this point?
Yes, yes, thank you, Chair. It was just to give a bit of assurance. There are a number of different dates that we've put in. We wanted to ensure that we had given enough time to update in the guidance. I think the guidance is out of date, strengthening that guidance, embedding it and working with staff. So the short life working group has been set up. So we have already started to work on our guidance and change it. We're working with staff members. The report has been circulated. D365 will actually, because it's a new system in place, is actually going to help us with the inconsistent filing of documents and stuff. So this new system actually is going to be able to fix a lot of the issues that we had. But the short life working group has commenced. As I say, I oversee it. It's chaired by one of my service managers. So in that work is already commenced. And I suppose as Jamie has alluded to, the controls were in place. They just had to be strengthened and streamlined. But for us, there has to be a balance of some kind of protection for our service users and staff, but also the balance of choice and control for service users, because it's their money. So there has to be that balance there. But yes, so we are working on it. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks. And then final kind of supplementary on that one is when you see a bad report like this, kind of there's a temptation to kind of wag the finger and say must try harder. But is there? Sorry, that's a human reaction. But actually, one of the questions we should be asking is, are you getting the support you need from senior management and/or from the board? Because if there's something going wrong, I generally figure that people don't come to work to do a bad job. So what, are you getting all the support that you need? And if not, how can we help?
So, sorry, Councillor Cook, is this to me or to Jamie? Sorry.
Actually, it's probably to you, Claire, but or happy for Jamie to comment as well.
Yes, thank you for the question. Yes, so the report, I think this is quite a disappointing report for us. Normally there's a few findings, so it is quite disappointed. But yes, there is support from senior management and across the council, because I would say it's not just adult social work and social care, it sits with finance as well. So we are working together, and myself and other chief officers are around this. So yeah, we are. We're working together across the system.
Thanks. That's reassuring.
Good. Okay, thank you. Hussein.
Thank you, Chair. And I would echo the initial comments by the Chair and John as well, that first reading of this report was a bit concerning, I think, especially around the kind of perceived incongruence between the national standards and the way things are happening locally. But it's encouraging to hear that plans are in place, especially around providing guidance to staff. And my question is really one for Jamie, just for clarity. The report has issued recommendations, and you have taken assurance from the work that management are doing in response to that report. In terms of timeframes, over and above the actions that management will take, when would you expect to be re-auditing this in terms of the general cycle of audits, to be able to come back with an update and see how things have progressed in the interim?
Jamie.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much for your question as well. So we don't necessarily automatically go back and re-audit areas. So the committee may ask for that as part of the internal audit planning process. But what we do is we follow up with management on all their recommendations. So we don't just take their updates. So when those fall due, internal audit would reach out and we would ask for the evidence. We would actually review that processes have been updated, controls have been implemented, and we would report that back to this committee as part of the previous report, so the recommendations follow up. In terms of actually like cyclical auditing, it could be between kind of 3 to 5 years, but we are fully risk-based. So if management were implementing those actions, if we saw other trends, we may audit that sooner, or if we can take assurances and there are more prevalent risks that we've got to audit, we may audit it later. So in terms of an actual full audit, no time frame set. In terms of follow-up, as they fall due, and that will be reported to this committee.
Thank you very much. That's very helpful. Appreciate it.
Okay, good. Yeah, I think we will keenly look out for the follow-up reports back. It was a worrying report to read. I mean, you can appreciate that adult care staff are operating in very pressurized environments, and they want to be helpful and supportive, and they want to work as best as they can to support the people in their care. But there does seem to be that need for tightening up on the processes and the systems of managing cash and finances. So it seems timely to have the D365 system coming in. I think that should give support to staff to help them to support the adults in their care. So yeah, so we will look forward to that report back. Did you say will we know back in June next year? Was that correct? Middle of next year?
Myself, Chair, on the audit recommendations follow-up.
Yeah.
Yes, so as they fall due, so one's due in January, some February, May and June, but by June you would have an update on all recommendations and their implementation.
Okay. That's good. Thank you. That was actually a very positive report, I think. And although management the management response is that there are no substantive concerns and issues, it is important to get the process right, and that's what we're all here to try and help ensure that the process is right. So, are we content with the recommendations for this report, committee? Yeah.
Yep, okay. Agreed.
Yep. Great.
Thank you very much. The finance monitoring update is 6.1.
Yeah,
Paul,
that'll be me.
Paul, thank you.
Yeah. This is the monitoring up to the first quarter for June. You can see it's showing a slight underspend of £11,000. And on Appendix A, you've got the variances up and down on the various pages there, and Appendix B gives some of the notes, the backup. But if there's any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Yes, I'm happy to open up to questions. Hussein.
Thank you, Chair. You'll be tired of me by the end of this meeting.
Sure.
Turning to page 44, just a little bit of explanation, and without getting too much into the detail of the prescribing committee, but page 44 regarding prescribing, obviously you've highlighted the risks around increasing charges. There's a note under that to say this does not include the 20 million tariff uplift, and apologies, I'm paraphrasing from memory here. This does not include the 20 million uplift. So could you maybe just give us some narrative for clarity for anybody reading that, what that actually means in terms of the sustainability going forward, appreciating, of course, that there are due to be discussions in November by the relevant committee on how to look at this, and also perhaps if I can ask you, rather cheekily ask you to look into your crystal ball, given recent trends, where are we in terms of sustainability around pricing and cost going forward over the short to medium term? But it was mainly that 20 million. How does that factor into our calculations and our predictions if that is not included in the current figures? I'm just a bit confused as to how those two equate.
Yeah, the first one, the tariff uplift of the 20 million, that comes in every year. There's an uplift comes in, but we get funding for that. But the 20 million hasn't been agreed, and the funding level hasn't been agreed. So I think last year there was a slight pressure. From memory, I think it was about £100,000 that we were short with the tariff uplift and what we received funding. But as yet, we haven't had any indication of what that's going to be for this year. And as far as the pricing increases, that's what's causing part of the problem. It's the increase in the number of prescriptions multiplied by the increase in the average price of the prescriptions is causing us the issue. And that's going to be the focus of the prescribing group meeting in November. But there's also discussions with ourselves and Scottish Government around, you know, we're not alone with this. This is a national problem across all IJBs and all health boards. So the prescribing group are hopefully going to take that into national discussion as well.
And in terms of, obviously, we know that inflation is affecting every sector of life. I'm sure the health sector is no exception to that. Would you see the current pressures continuing on the same trajectory, or do you see there being a sharp uplift in those pressures in the coming years?
I think there's going to definitely carry on in the same trajectory, because what we're saying is the 3.6 is us forecasting for the year end, and there's not. This is at month 3, and there's nothing happened in month 4 and 5 for us to adjust or change that down. So I think it is going in the that way.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for that. Can I continue that query about the prescribing? That's one of the largest variances in the budget.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that would appear to be an area of growth and expenditure. Are there other clinical reasons that can help to explain and to give context to this?
I think, yeah,
growth.
The group are looking into why there's a number of the increase in the number of prescriptions. Previously, I think the average was around 9 million across Grampian, but now we're up to 10.5 million. So the group are actually looking at why, what's behind this, where the prescriptions are coming from, and who's prescribing it. So it's all the data that is going to be looked at through the group.
Well, I think that would be particularly helpful to get some, I don't know, some analysis, some trend analysis across the IJB area, because that will help us with budget planning, and it will also help to give us some insights into the clinical side of things, because that is quite a major. That is a major 8.6% variation. Very, very worrying.
Yep.
John, did you want to come in on this point?
Yeah, it was. And I think I've probably said this at previous meetings, both of this committee and the IJB generally. I think traditionally here in Grampian, we've been pretty good on prescribing in terms of relatively high levels of generic prescribing compared to the national average, and relatively low levels of prescribing of drugs of limited clinical value compared to the national average. And I'd be surprised if that had changed terribly. And I'm speculating a wee bit. I mean, it'd be good to get the data back. I mean, speculating, I think that if you look at prescribing levels across the piece, both in Scotland and in England and in Wales, you tend to get more prescribing when there is greater economic pressure. So I suspect there's a cost of living issue going on there that might be affecting it.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm speculating ahead of a meeting that's going to look at these things, but if anyone's got any comments, I'd be interested.
Yeah, we're speculating the same type of thing until we get the data back from the prescribing group. We're speculating on the same basis as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's very, very reasonable. It would be useful to get any feedback from this research group about issues around over prescribing, and around repeat prescriptions, whether there's an issue around that, just to get a bit more context to help us understand the budget and to try and control the budget in the future. So yeah, that would be useful. Hussein.
Yeah, just another point to throw into the mix, Chair, and it is mentioned in the report around, potential wastage, and we're all becoming more focused on recycling, on using our resources wisely. But I'm sure we've all done it in the past. We've maybe ordered our prescription a week earlier than we should have, and we've found a box down the back of the sofa, or whatever it may be. It would just be interesting if there could be something coming back in the data that shows if there's any analysis of that from aggregate records, simply because that is mentioned in the report as a potential risk that could be a contributory factor on this.
Absolutely.
Yep. Okay.
Good point. So can I ask another question about the learning disabilities line, which is another that's some variance. On page 44, Appendix B, there's mention of the underspend there. There's mention of the offset by pressure from one individual. Is it not a possibility that if you have one individual in that who's very high dependency, I mean, what are there not chances of having another or another multiple, and which would be, I don't like to express it in financial terms, but would be additional pressures on the budget quite unexpectedly and quite severe, and adding to that variation.
Yeah, we've always got that. That's an inherent risk of the learning disabilities and mental health lines. Some of these clients do cost significant budgets, and like you said, one or two of those coming onto our books would cause a major problem. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, I'm not expressing it in terms of the economics, but we do have to be aware of that side. June.
Thanks, Chair. I suppose my question is really around what is the long-term plan then for the IGB in relation to people who are extremely complex and require that kind of level of care? What are the plans to look at environments? We know we've got lots of younger people who will come in, transition into adult services very soon with extremely high physical needs as well as mental health needs. And they will be extremely challenging to find the right environment and the right care package for. So just really trying to understand that, and is that incorporated in the work that we're doing?
Yeah, so Claire, would you be able to help with that question?
Yes, Chair, I will. Just in picking up the point about the planning, we do a lot of joint work with Children's Services, and we start to look probably from about 12, 13 of young people who are going to be coming into adult services, and we work jointly in their transitions plan and what that's going to look like. In terms of, I suppose, the more complex cases we're seeing now, and we are seeing an increase in complex cases as people are living longer. There's a lot of work in terms of our complex care plan and how we work towards the future and what that care needs to look like, taking in tech-enabled care and digital, but also looking at our out-of-authority placements and really how we commission in a different way. So all that work is planned. It's going to be part of the market facilitation statement. But in terms of the budget planning, we do know each year who we've got that's coming in with complex issues, and we do try to manage that budget.
Good. Thanks. Paul.
Yes, it's just to say as well as during the budget setting process, we do have a line in there for transition cases coming across. So we're clear in the team, we do look at this, and then we actually budget for this as part of the MTFF going forward.
Good. Thank you. I think it. Oh yeah, John.
Yeah, just briefly on the same issue. We have got a complex care business case, and there is a report coming back to I think it's the Council's Finance Committee in November, if my memory serves correctly. So that should reduce the out of area placement cost. I mean, there is a cost in developing the facility in Aberdeen, but it will reduce the out of area cost as well as being better for the patient. So there is stuff going on. In terms of Claire's mention of tech-enabled care, Luann Grujon and I went to the tech hub in the harbour there a few weeks ago. It's really impressive.
Okay, thanks for that. It's quite helpful to see some of the that's a helpful mitigation, and there are other mitigations listed in Appendix F. So to go back to the subject of prescribing, it's good that there's mention there of review of repeat prescriptions and polypharmacy. There's also mention of social prescribing as a solution for prescribing. Is that an area of analysis or thought that's going to be investigated further?
Yeah, I think this is all part of the data that's coming out. We're having a look at where the prescriptions are, why they're prescribing them, and is there any other options?
Right.
As in the social prescribing being, rather than having, drugs issued.
Yeah. Good. It's reassuring to know it. It's all interlinked. That's great. Thanks. Thank you very much for that. So is the committee content with the recommendations for 6.1?
Yep.
Yep, happy with that.
Good. Let's go on to 6.2, which is the locality plans, the 3 locality plans, the annual reports. Who would be introducing this? Would this be?
It'll be myself, Chair, and my colleague Jade, who's sitting next to me. So yep. Happy just to introduce the report if you're happy with that, Chair.
Great, thank you very much, Ian.
Thank you. So good morning, everyone. First, I'd just like to introduce myself. So my name's Ian Robertson, I'm a Transformation Programme Manager within the Communities team within Aberdeen City Health and Social Care Partnership. And I'll just let my colleague Jade introduce herself as well.
Hi there, my name's Jade Layden. I'm a Community Development Manager within Community Planning's Locality Planning team, and I co-lead the Locality Planning team with Ian.
Thanks, Jade. As Jade just said, we co-lead the Integrated Locality Planning team, which is made up of public health coordinators from the Aberdeen City Health and Social Care Partnership and CLD officers from Community Plan Aberdeen. The team was set up in February this year to facilitate locality planning within the city and deliver the integrated locality plan model, which was agreed by the IGB and Community Planning Board in 2021. The IGB has a statutory duty under the Public Bodies Joint Working Act to deliver a locality planning system, and it's a requirement within the partnership's delivery plan to prepare an annual report, which you see before you. This will also be the last annual report before all 3 locality plans are refreshed later this year, with a target date of completion of April 2024. As the reports are quite extensive, we thought it'd be quite helpful if we delivered a brief presentation, providing an overview of the reports and areas of progress and challenge over the 12 months, broken down by the three themes of economy, people, and place. So I'll just share my screen just now, and we'll take you through the presentation. Okay, so the first theme is economy, and this sort of feeds into the cost of living challenges, which has been discussed earlier by the committee. So just taking the first section there on worried not enough to eat, all this data is taken from our City Voice survey. So you can see that it's higher in the central locality, and just take you through some of the data actually in the top numbers there, like the 8.3, 7.2, 9.7, that's locality wide. But in the brackets with the asterisk next to them, that is in our priority neighbourhoods. So you would expect to see, and is borne out by the data, that there's greater concern about having enough to eat in our priority neighbourhoods. So if you take that, for instance, in the North locality, there's 8.3 in the wider North locality of worried they're not enough to eat, but it is as high as 29.4% in our deprived priority neighbourhoods, which is round about the Northfield sort of area. In terms of another key aspect of cost of living, it's fuel poverty, not be able to heat their home. Again, we see it higher in priority neighbourhoods, but it's still round about a third across all 3 of our locality areas. And in terms of the percentage of children in low-income families living in our priority neighbourhoods, it's just over 50% for all of our localities. But what that also indicates is that there is around about half of our children in low-income families are living out with our priority neighbourhoods. So a lot of that poverty and deprivation could be quite unseen. It's something that we've got to find out a bit more data on, and we can focus on that in our locality plans moving forward. In terms of what community planning partners have been doing to try and mitigate some of these issues, we've been raising awareness of community food provision, such as community food pantries, such as the Seaton Community Cafe, which received health improvement funding from the Health and Social Care Partnership. We've got our Staying Warm and Well winter roadshows to promote warm spaces and support people with their fuel bills, insulation, and energy efficiency measures. So details on how to access warm and well winter roadshows and warm spaces is detailed within the report. We've also supported people to access benefits through the Financial Inclusion Team, which is a team for Aberdeen City Council. Their benefits calculator, which came online in 2022, and a booklet was also introduced for families to give information on accessing the child benefits which they're entitled to. We've also targeted employability support for Ukrainian refugees and those whose English is not their first language. Our ABZ Works team has been providing sessions to help young people who've disengaged from school in priority neighbourhoods work their way into positive destinations such as employment, apprenticeships, internships, that sort of thing. And Business Gateway drop-in sessions in priority neighbourhoods have also been set up to encourage new business startups, which is obviously good for the business owners, but also provides employment and opportunities for local people within localities. Just moving on to our second theme, which is people. So again, touching on the school leavers achieving initial positive destinations, that's highest in the central locality. But it's also worth noting that all three localities have slightly fallen from 2021 figures. The citywide average for school leavers is 93.8, and both the north and south localities are below that citywide average. It's still high, but it's something that we'll continue to monitor over the next year. In terms of being unable to eat healthy food due to poverty, again, that is higher in our priority neighbourhoods, but it's still at 10% or just over 10% in all of our three locality areas. And in terms of life expectancy, it has been stable or flatlining over the last sort of 3 or 4 years, and more details provided within the reports itself. Females tend to live 2 or 3 years longer than males, but as you'd expect, life expectancy in deprived in our priority neighbourhoods for both males and females is a few years lower than locality-wide. So in terms of what we've done across the people thematic area, we've delivered initiatives to support early learning. One of our key programmes is our PEAP programme, which supports parents and carers to make the most of everyday learning opportunities. So you can get a referral there from the family learning service or a health visitor, and it just provides an opportunity for parents and carers and young people to develop skills, develop bonding, and help them prepare for school and later life. We have our Grow Well choices for early years to support people working with children aged 3 to 5, and that's to really embed sort of healthy lifestyles and nutrition and these sort of opportunities at an early stage. It's a sort of true example of prevention and early intervention at play, and something that the public health team is working hard on. We also have our Health Improvement Fund, which is a fund approved by the IGB annually. I think it's worth about £192,000 a year. And that supported 60 community projects across the city. And it's the whole purpose of the Health Improvement Fund is to try and reduce health inequalities across the city. So it's supported lunch clubs, it's supported initiatives aimed at young people and the elderly. It's supported birthing classes and community gardening across the city. We've also been promoting volunteering in the community, and our community planning partners, ACVO, have been leading the way on this. We also have our Fair Aberdeen funded projects, and SHMU have got an excellent programme to support people who've recently released from prison to make sure they're in the right sort of accommodation, that their health needs have been looked after, and we can help them to address any sort of mental health or substance misuse challenges that they may have. So I'm just going to hand it over to my colleague Jade, and she'll take you through the place theme and some of the next steps moving forward.
Thank you. So as you can see from some of our place statistics, the satisfaction with green space is typically lower in our priority neighbourhoods than it is citywide, although you will see that in the central locality it is slightly higher. So we're putting this down to the location of things like the Seaton Park in the areas and things as well. Councillor Cook, you might notice that we have updated our figures from the Community Planning Aberdeen Board now in relation to people cycling with the last year. It is not indeed 90% of people cycling, unfortunately, as much as we would like to be. Although you will note that in the North locality, the North Priority Neighbourhood, the 11.8% is lower than in the other two priority neighbourhoods. Again, this could be because of place-based location, the geography of the area not being quite as central and not as close to local amenities, although this is something that we're going to look at across with our public health colleagues over the course of the next few years within our refreshed locality plans. Some of the key pieces of work that we've done across place over the course of the last year is the increase in the amount of community food growing projects available across all localities. The big issue e-bikes were launched in the city this year as well. We've promoted active travel opportunities and funding streams for community members and groups, and that will include HIF funding, but also kind of more locally based homegrown funds as well. And part of our CLD family learning team have been working with disadvantaged young people across the city's natural kind of green space to promote healthy and creative outdoor learning and play. You can go on to the next slide, please, Ian. So in terms of community empowerment, we have locality empowerment groups and priority neighbourhood partnerships. So the locality empowerment groups, which are often referred to as LEGs, were reinstated earlier this year, having not met since early 2022 due to COVID. So these meetings are now held on a two-monthly cycle and alternate between virtual meetings and in-person meetings at a community venue. These meetings provide an opportunity for LEG members to influence and shape the delivery of our locality plans and hold community planning partners to account. The LEGs also provide the locality planning team and outcome improvement project managers an opportunity to involve community members in their projects to gain valuable feedback. Similarly, the priority neighbourhood partnerships, again, are often referred to as PNPs, have the same focus, but focus on the areas that you see on the screen. So there are 3 priority neighbourhood partnerships as well. One for Torry, one for Northfield, Middlefield, Heatheryfold, Cummings Park, Maastricht, and another for Tillydrone, Woodside and Seaton. They continue to meet throughout COVID and still meet now. They meet in person now that the COVID restrictions have lifted, although we do offer a hybrid option so that those that are unable to meet us in person can still participate. And that's probably one of the key benefits from COVID, is that now we do have that kind of option to have those hybrid meetings. So people that maybe have issues around social isolation or don't feel comfortable coming to meetings might be able to join us virtually. So that is one positive. the priority neighbourhood partnerships as well do have community members acting as chairs for the meetings as well, which is a really positive impact from this year. In terms of our next steps then, if you want to, oh yeah, thank you. Our annual reports, we plan to publish on the Community Planning Aberdeen website and share them with our community and the community planning partners. And so the locality planning team now are working on using the public health place standard tool to engage with communities to inform the refresh of our locality plans and local outcome improvement plans, so that we can identify the priorities for 2024 through 2026. So I would encourage you to get involved in the engagements and share the What Matters to You engagement that we're going to be holding from the 6th of October through to the 5th of November. So there'll be events across the localities and in our locality neighbourhoods, as well as an online platform, so we can ensure that as many people can participate as possible. We'll also be focusing on some key groups, so we can focus on targeted groups that we may not always manage to engage with, but we know that our colleagues can. And happy to take any questions, Chair. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Ian and Jade, for that very comprehensive overview of the three plans, which are extremely detailed. I mean, they report an enormous amount of really positive work that's going on at the front line, helping and supporting people in the localities and the neighbourhoods in so many different ways. I think one of the strongest themes is that one about community empowerment, and it's really good to see that there's a focus on community empowerment groups and partnerships. For example, in the priority areas, there is the mention in the report that when you're looking for community empowerment, you're looking for people to get involved. You're looking for volunteers. You're trying to develop the third sector, and ACVO have indicated that there are barriers due to people's work pressures and so forth. So where there has been that effort and a lot of energy put in to get people together in an area and to support them, there's really good examples. There's mention of environmental groups, support groups, and so forth, making a difference in their area. Just feel that community empowerment, that does seem a really important area for a focus in each of the localities. Is that going to be a challenge given there's a limited resource to support and enable, and on the other hand, people have got busy lives, in communities. People are trying to get by. Is there an opportunity? Are there opportunities to expand that relationship with communities?
Sorry, Chair, we're experiencing a bit of IT issues, but I think we've got the gist. You take. There you go. I think we caught the gist of what you were saying. I think you were asking if we're experiencing challenges due to capacity around community engagement, empowerment, and how we manage to engage people and partners within that process. Sorry, we seem to be losing.
Is it just me, or is Jade frozen?
Can you still hear me, Councillor?
Yes, but you're breaking up. It's quite intermittent.
Yeah. We'll do our best. Well, we've got a decent internet connection, so empowerment very important. The Community Planning Partnership launched the Community Empowerment Strategy in December last year, and that really is the basis of how we've been engaging with our communities this year. From that community empowerment strategy, we've introduced a new the law stretch outcome 16, and that has 7 dedicated improvement projects. And we want some of the basis of that is improving our uptake voice survey. It's increasing participation and diversity in locality planning groups. As Jade, the COVID restriction, this is the first year that COVID have either just been completely gone or the advice has been loosened. So we're able to hold 2 citywide events, which are attended by the community gathering. Was in May, it was attended by over 120 delegates. The community in June was attended by 167 delegates. So it's just another tool in our armory so we can have our in-person and hybrid local group meetings, and we also have our community engagements. We go out into the community and engage with local people. For instance, I to the Bridget Dawn Community Council tonight to brief them on locality plan, to encourage great in locality plan. I have fantastic building sessions that we do. And as Jade mentioned, we are engaging with our communities. There's 6 dedicated sessions across our locality areas during October, and that's across the city. So there's a variety of community going on. We'll just need to upscale and escalating it. But so community is something that we're both incredibly passionate about, and that's why the locality planning team has been set.
Great. That's really encouraging to hear. Thank you. So it's going in absolutely the right direction. I think it is important to put the emphasis on community engagement, build up solidarity within communities, build up relationships and so forth, and that will help. You know, if people feel more confident and they're developing the sense of belonging, contributing more to well-being in their area, that's going to help us deal with issues, in particular health inequalities, the various forms of fuel poverty, food poverty, and so forth. When people are able and are empowered to work together, so that's really good to hear. Thank you, Hussein.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I would concur with everything that you've said around, firstly, the power of work that has gone in, both that was shown in the presentation, and thank you both for that, and also in the report. I really want to focus on a whole community approach, though, and perhaps some of those who will find it hardest to reach all of this good work that is going on throughout the city are our disabled citizens, and particularly those who have a learning disability or difficulty or a sensory impairment. And I guess my question is that whereas it's absolutely right that we work with our community partners, have you or do you plan to work with any of the disabled third sector organisations to try and increase the uptake of disabled people, firstly to take part in these events, but also to make sure that their views can be represented? And the reason I say that is that a lot of these organisations will they will have direct lists or contacts of our disabled citizens within the community, but they will also have the specialist knowledge around how to communicate with them, possibly around specialist support that disabled citizens may need to take part in these events, which, with the best will in the world, some of the community organisations simply may not have the resource to be able to offer. Plus, of course, we already know that some of the groups that I've just mentioned are often the most disconnected from what happens in their communities, simply because of the difficulties they have in accessing the information in the first place. And just very lastly, I'm very pleased to hear that you're having a digital offering in terms of the Your Voice Matters. We have very strong evidence that previous citywide consultations didn't really have a particularly great focus on accessibility in terms of the usability of those systems. And it would just be a plea to make sure that you perhaps ask somebody with a screen reader or ask somebody with a learning disability to test these systems to make sure that we're not and I'm careful to use the expression, but we're not giving with one hand and saying, here is a way that you can participate for somebody that perhaps would struggle to use a community setting. But then on the other hand, we are creating a system which perhaps they're not able to use with their particular adaptations or technologies. But as I say, very, very pleased to hear all the work that you're doing, but I would strongly encourage working with some of our disabled third sector organisations so that we can get the best community penetration within our disabled communities that we can. Thank you.
Thanks for that.
Thank you, Hussein. I think I absolutely take your point. We are working currently with some of our community planning partners, so including GREC around equality and diversity, also with our council equality and diversity officer to ensure that we do cover as many groups and organisations and meet those needs as we can. We're at the kind of beginning of that journey, but we want to make sure that we're making everything that we share as accessible. And in addition to that, I think we're in a uniquely privileged position to be working with local people, the local people that we are working with. One lady in particular that I won't name, a visual impairment, and she's been really coming with ensuring that the work that we are kind of consistently putting out can be accessed by a screen reader, and she's giving us some sheer side COSLA, the things that she would find are in place when we're holding events, meetings, things like that. So we're in the really fortunate position to have her as a kind of reference point to make sure. So that's something that we want to strengthen forward and increasing the tools and resources that we have. Similarly, with our offer for people to complete the refresh online, we all have paid copies of those available at our libraries, so people can pick up a paper copy, complete, and then return it to the library for us to collect at the end of the consultation. If access anything digitally is going to be, you can't make one of the events, you are still able to participate with a paper copy as well.
Yeah, just to add, partnership they'll have an equality and diversity network which we feed into the requirement of GB reports to prepare an equality human rights impact assessment, and so that's something we will continue to do for organising meetings post-COVID. The accessibility is incredibly. We talked about our online meetings, also in-person meetings as required for hybrid meetings as a requirement for to take it partners want. So you're talking about accessibility, you're talking about how many states there's a list, and we're talking environment, we're also made of people who might have been issues about feeling comfortable in that environment, so that social isolation and loneliness has been of the COVID-19 pandemic. So there's a lot of things of, and it's good that we've got these impact assessments to help. We'll always take guidance from a quality officer network to make, and community partners to make sure we get it right. We won't get it right all the time, but we'll continue to learn.
Thank you very much. And I think that last point that you mentioned, getting the evidence from local people, but also I think as we increase the number of services which are delivered within the community by the community, it will be that resourcing pressure which we start to run up against, whether that is in terms of affordability or whether that is in terms of knowledge actually within the community itself. So not necessarily the knowledge where this is being delivered by officers or by staff, but where you have community groups that are doing their own things and are driving things forward, making sure that they also have the relevant knowledge and understanding. So that if somebody comes to them and says, I want to be part of your group, then they have the ability to either go to somebody and say, X has come to us, we're not sure how to support them, or that they have this knowledge embedded within them and the resourcing to be able to support that. But thank you very much for that explanation. And as I say, hats off to the power of work that you're doing.
Yeah, definitely agreed. So thank you again for the reports, which reflect a considerable amount of really excellent quality work across the city. So many thanks for that. The recommendations are on page 52. Does the committee content with the recommendations?
Yes.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah. Content.
Thank you very much. Let's move on in that case to 6.3, which quarterly performance reports. I think I have Michelle. Is it Michelle?
No, you've got me this morning, Martin.
It's yourself,
yeah.
Alison. Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. Thanks, Alison. Would you like to introduce this?
Yeah, thank you. I will do it as briefly as I can. So this report contains details of progress made against the Year 2 delivery plan projects as of the end of June 2023, which is our Q1. Appendix B, starting at page 139, contains the tracking spreadsheet with the projects grouped by programme, indicating the BRAG status and providing commentary on the latest update. Appendix C, which starts at page 146, is the dashboard showing performance against the KPIs selected for the delivery plan. I appreciate that both of these appendices contain a lot of information, so we have developed Appendix A, which is an overview of both the tracker and the dashboard, highlighting key information. 76% of the projects are at green, with 19% at amber. 2 projects had not started as at Q1, but I can update that both of those are now currently underway. We have introduced a new category of closed for a project, which we have now used for 2 of the projects in Year 2. One of these is in relation to developing a flexible bed base, and the other was about the introduction of digital solutions. It was felt that activity relevant to both of these were already captured in other specific delivery plan projects, and this was identified when we were reporting progress, and there was a lot of duplication. So we have now marked both of these closed. The overview also summarises the achievements and challenges per programme and provides commentary on the data provided in the dashboard. I'd welcome comments on whether members found the overview helpful or otherwise, and indeed any suggestions for improving it going forward. As per the planner, it was agreed that when we brought each quarterly performance report to the committee, we would also provide a deeper dive into 2 programmes at a time. And today we have colleagues here who will present information and take questions on the mental health and learning disabilities and the frailty programmes. So I'm happy to take any questions on the report and the appendices before moving on to those presentations, and also to take any suggestions for the next 2 areas for deeper dives, which we'll bring to the November meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. Can I just make a couple of comments? First of all, I think the format, the layout is very helpful. It's very comprehensive. Just the delivery plan. I did have to get out my magnifying glass to read some of the text there, but all good to read. So, I mean, I've got a couple of questions, if that's okay, about some of the individual projects. So, for example, and these are amber categories. Our intention of co-designing Aberdeen as an age-friendly city. It's kind of, does that need a push?
I don't think it needs a push. We've certainly got lots of people around about it, and there's a will to do that. Part of what is sort of restraining it a little bit at the minute is the availability of funding. I mean, it costs quite a lot to put on the gathering, and we we want to plan and do our approach to age friendly properly. So it's just really, I think we were a little bit worried about the timeline that we set ourselves. But we're certainly got lots of people around about it, and there's certainly a will to make sure that that progresses.
Great. I think it is. I think that is an important aspiration for us to have in the city. The next one was in the group of mental health and learning disabilities. There's the intention of reviewing autism and neurodivergency, and that's not progressing as swiftly as desired. So again, just any commentary on that would be helpful.
So the main reason for the amber status there is that we are waiting on the strategy being published by the Scottish Government, and then we will pick up on our actions locally in relation to that strategy. So that's the reason for the amber status there.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, thank you very much. Any questions? June.
Thanks, and thanks, Alison, for the paper, really detailed and comprehensive. My question is in relation to the Morse project for the community nurses and AHPs. It's not you've got it not started here. I know it's started because there's pan-Grampian work going on around it. I'm just wondering if it should just be amber and not started, because the work is ongoing.
So the update is as per the end of Q1, and at that point we hadn't appointed the transformation program manager for Morse, so that's why it was noted as not started at that point. But you're absolutely right. We now have the transformation program manager in place, and you will certainly see a different update when we bring the Q2 report.
Excellent, thank you. John.
Thank you. Yeah, and thanks. Really good report. Very clear as ever. I thought the fact that we had some definitions and a glossary is really good. Doing my hobby horse thing, we refer to the Grampian TPM, which I now realise is Transformation Program Manager on page 129, but I couldn't work out what TPM stood for at the time. So if we could, I do it myself, use acronyms and jargon, so those who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones, but if we could make sure that we're doing that. So sorry to be nitpicky. And what was my other question? Oh yeah, my other question was, what's the difference between complete and closed? I wasn't totally sure about that.
So complete is where we have actually completed a project. It's reached its end and we've completed it. Closed means we have decided to not progress that project. So we're closing it off as opposed to delivering on it.
Thanks. Now that you said that, that makes complete sense, and I can't work out why I had to ask the question in the first place, but thank you for the clarification.
No worries, and apologies for the acronyms. It is very difficult to stop ourselves using these acronyms, particularly, as you say, because there's so much information in there, and if we expand absolutely everything, then it's going to be even more words to try and fit into that page, but we will do our best to avoid them.
And as I say, I've done it myself.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Hussein.
Hey, hi there. I was a little bit anxious when I heard that this was coming in the papers, but it's a pleasant surprise. It's really readable. It's very easy to go through. And the only suggestion I would make, and this might be a function of my screen reader, but could you perhaps number the items so that if we're referring to them on a page number, we can just say number 26 as opposed to having to refer to the whole item title just for ease of reference. But if you could actually embed those numbers into the item title rather than have them as standalone. And if you need me to explain that in a more technical way, I can do that. But it's just that if you number them standalone, the PDF tends to scramble it sometimes. So if you could just embed that into the item title, say 26, and then whatever the title of the thing is. But other than that, it's very readable. I found the first appendix gave a really good explanation and framed everything really well before actually going through the detail of all the programs. So thank you so much for that.
Okay.
Thanks, Hussein, and we'll certainly add those numbers into the titles. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. June?
Thanks. I was wanting to move on to the performance element of this paper. Is that okay?
Yes, absolutely.
So in relation to the reporting, Alison, I know I've commented on falls on numerous occasions in the past. So it's really lovely to see that falls with harm and things distinctly identified within this data. So I did see a spike in the number of falls, particularly in Q1 of this year, and just wondering, do we have any understanding of that, and is there anything being done around it? So that was my first question. My second question was about Rosewell and its step up role, if you like, and that seems to have diminished quite dramatically. And has that been a change in the strategy for how we use Rosewell House, or is there something else going on around that? Thank you. That was my two questions.
Thanks, June. Firstly, in relation to the spike and falls, I don't have an answer for that, but I can certainly take that away and come back to you with a response for that one. In terms of the step-up function of Rosewell, I think naturally over the period where we had a lot of pressure on the system, Rosewell kind of, not by default rather than by design, became more of a step down than a step up. But we're obviously very aware of that, and we have just undertaken, as I'm sure you're aware, an evaluation of Rosewell House, and we're currently having discussions and much deliberation about what to do with that going forward, whether the original vision for Rosewell is correct, or whether we should perhaps change focus. And we're obviously looking at other facilities that we have around the community and what role they play in all of that. So it's not a deliberate strategy yet at the minute, and we will obviously come back to IJB with any proposals if we were going to change that. So as I say, it's more by default than by design, but we're very aware of it, and we're currently looking into what that should look like in the future.
Okay.
Thank you, Alison. Good. Martin, can I just ask another question in relation to RCH as well? So Relcon Hospital, we're seeing the occupancy continuing to really increase as well, over 120%, and so that will cause lots of problems in the system in relation to that. And is there any plans to try and alleviate that pressure that's on the wards within Cornhill Hospital?
Yeah, absolutely. Judith and our team are actively looking at that just now, but it does form part of the overall mental health and learning disabilities transformation programme that I'm not sure if Kimberly and Ali will maybe be able to touch on that in more detail when they do their presentation on that. But yeah, rest assured, it is certainly something that's very much on our radar, and we're looking at everything that we can do to resolve that, because of course some of that some of the solution will be based in the community as opposed to the hospitals.
Okay, thank you very much for that. So are we content to note this report as a committee? Yep, okay, thank you very much. 6.4 is the Justice Social Work.
Sorry, Martin, it's just we've got the two deeper dives to come. We've got a presentation on mental health and learning disabilities and on frailty. So if I can bring my colleagues in to do that. And also from the committee, we were looking to see if you had any proposals for the deeper dives for next time round, but we can perhaps come on to that once you've seen the two presentations.
Okay, let's do that.
So I think we're doing mental health and learning disabilities first, and I think, are we starting with Kimberly?
Yeah, that'll be
Kimberly,
me.
do you want to introduce yourself and
No worries.
carry on with the presentation? Thank you.
Absolutely. So hello everyone, my name is Kimberly Craig. I'm a Senior Project Manager within Mental Health and Learning Disability Services, and that's within Aberdeen City Health and Social Care Partnership. I'm just going to bring up my presentation. Bear with me 2 seconds. Here we are. Can everybody see these slides? Just want to make sure before I carry on. So alongside my colleague Ali Palin, I'll be giving you an overview of the mental health and learning disability programmes that we're working on at the moment. And Ali will also be giving you an overview of his mental health in primary care project, its progress and some of the challenges that have cropped up within that project. But of course, if you've got any questions that you want to ask about anything we share today, please do so. So the first slide that I'm going to show is going to demonstrate the programs that we're working on at the moment and the projects. And this will be alongside our governance and reporting requirements. We do have 2 different reporting structures. Of course, we're reporting into RAPC every 3 months, and we're also reporting into the senior leadership team as well, and that's on a monthly basis. So those are updates that are coming in through the strategic delivery plan. And you can see from the slide, but I will read these out, the extent of the work that we're reporting on. So some of these may be familiar to you. So we have complex care, our mental health and learning disabilities transformation programme, mental health and primary care, which Ali will talk about in a minute, autism and neurodevelopmental strategy, suicide prevention and learning disabilities transitions. But we are also reporting into the portfolio board as well, sorry, the Mental Health and Learning Disabilities Portfolio Board, and we're doing this on a monthly basis, and we do this through flash reports and updating a programme tracker. But we also have the cross-system strategic delivery team who we go to for support. So while we're not reporting to the strategic delivery team, we do go to them for guidance, support, to raise any challenges or issues that we may need to escalate. This team is made up of mental health leads, so people very knowledgeable in their area. So the bits that we're reporting to the portfolio board on are the MHLD transformation. So that's also going into yourselves and of course to the senior leadership team. And the transformation is made up of a few different projects. We have our learning disability health checks, forensic services, psychological therapies improvement board. We have older adult and learning disabilities service model. We're undertaking a general adult mental health secondary care pathway review. Review and modernisation of MHLD workforce and public empowerment group also sits within that programme. And just like we're reporting into RAPC, we're also coming in with mental health and primary care, autism, neurodevelopmental strategy, suicide prevention, and LD service crisis intervention and response. So we have quite a bit going on at the moment. These projects have end dates between September of 2023 and March 2025. And we do have some projects here in grey that have still to commence. So across nearly all of these projects, and I don't think it's unique to mental health and learning disabilities, there's a few different challenges we're coming up against within these projects, within the programme itself. Of course, I don't think it's unusual to find funding there, and we obviously have a very challenging financial landscape at the moment. Workforce constraints is another one. As a group, as a team, we're Grampian wide, so we have to consider our Grampian approach wherever possible as well. We have new strategies coming out, but across the projects, and again, not necessarily unique to MHLD, would be flow, workforce recruitment and retention, digital need of people and funding. So these are all challenges. Of course, there are ways that we're trying to mitigate this. So with funding, we are looking at what our priorities are, what other funding is available to us, what wider opportunities there are to collaborate. we're looking to revisit our resources and see if we can use them differently. With our workforce constraints, we're looking at the ask, and of course with so many different bits of work taking place, there's a lot of really key people having to come into nearly all of those bits of work. So how are we looking to have them involved is very important. And of course, there's opportunities to work more closely with other teams and other projects so that we can avoid duplication. We will. With the Grampian approach, of course, that's really challenging because we always have the areas, Aberdeenshire, Murray and City, to consider there. So wherever we can, of course, ensure a consistent or a similar service delivery for patients, that's of course very important. And we do have our strategies as well that are coming, but that's kind of plateauing our projects at the moment because we are awaiting those as well. But I'm just going to hand over to my colleague Ali, who's going to give you a bit of an introduction to his mental health in primary care project.
Thanks, Kimberly. I'll just quickly introduce myself for a start. So I'm Ali Palin. I'm the Mental Health and Learning Disabilities Senior Project Manager within the Health and Social Care Partnership in Aberdeen. And we just wanted to give an overview, a very brief overview of one of the projects that I've been involved with. And this is a mental health and primary care project. So it's a pilot programme that's currently ongoing within Kincorth and Cove Medical Practice. And prior to the initiation of the project, the plan was to come up with a new model within primary care, a new approach to mental health and primary care. And we had several objectives before we went and started the project. And it was primarily to test this new model of care in primary care for mental health, which was to be based on early intervention and prevention within the community, and basically to evaluate whether or not this approach provides system benefits. Talk a little bit about that in the next section there on benefits, and also a plan to roll the project out further afield within Aberdeen City should we prove the model to be successful within the pilot programme. So to touch on a few of the benefits that we've had, we've seen a lot of patients reporting, really good experience with the service. And one of the key things about the mental health practitioner service that we've got going on there is that the practitioner is an experienced professional in mental health, and they're able to give real time and care to the appointments, whereas a GP might only be able to dedicate 10 to 15 minutes for an appointment. This model relies on a quality care approach, which allows for a lot more time, so the patient can be in receipt of a lot higher quality care. So obviously that comes with it, improved patient interactions, and obviously then the outcomes of that care as well are a lot more beneficial to the patient and the system as a whole as well, with the referrals onto secondary healthcare and other appropriate areas for those patients as deemed necessary are historically through the pilot a lot more accurate, and their referrals are more appropriate than they might have been previous to that. I have another slide to talk about some other benefits shortly, but just as Kimberly touched upon some of the challenges, we've also found some financial challenges with our project. Initially, we had planned to have the pilot rolled out across 3 general practices across each of the localities within the city. However, this had to be reduced to focus on 1, which wasn't the plan, obviously, but we're still able to prove the model in Kincorth and Cove, which we've done successfully. And then obviously going forward, the financial landscape hasn't changed, so there's likely to be further challenges with funding going forward as well. Next slide, Kimberly. So this is a little anecdote from one of the practice staff within Kincorth and Cove. Basically, some of the key things to point out here that I'm really quite keen on pointing out is around the job satisfaction for the practitioner themselves, given the fact that the job satisfaction reports from GPs and other primary healthcare staff is kind of a record low, and I think the last report I saw was something around 85% of GPs were reporting that they were experiencing difficulties with their physical or mental health as a result of their work. This pilot has shown that our practitioners are really enjoying their job, and they're very passionate at what they do. They're very good at what they do as well. But I think that's something that's really worthwhile mentioning, because job satisfaction and staff retention is really important if we want to continue to protect our health services, in this case mental health service. I touched upon it before about the quality of care. That's something that I'm really passionate about. I've sat up there on some of these appointments myself and listened to the interactions, and to see the positive benefits that have come from those appointments firsthand has been quite powerful for myself to see that, and something that I'm really personally passionate about, to make sure that we are delivering that quality of service to our community members as well. And I think the next slide, Kimberly, has got some patient testimonials. So again, highlighting some of the positive work that we're doing there in Kincorth and Cove, and really highlighting the positive nature of the service itself and what it brings to the community members. And obviously post-pandemic, mental health of our population has taken an impact as well coming out of the COVID pandemic. So it's really good that this service is here, and it's obviously providing some clear benefits as well to community members. And I think that's it there. So if there's any questions, happy to take those. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ali. That was really helpful, really informative. Could I just ask an initial question? So through the engagement with the mental health practitioners, has there been measurement of impacts at all? Has that been possible? I'm thinking, for example, has there been any impact on pharmacological solutions that have been applied? We've spoken about prescribing just a few moments ago. Does the intervention from the mental health professionals help with therapeutic care of patients?
Yeah, I think we're seeing that, yes. We can see that through the referrals and some of the data that we've gathered through. I think just having the practitioner there in a first instance, whereas they might have gone to the GP previously, and obviously because the GPs are general medical practitioners, a medicated solution might have been something that might be offered more readily than the intervention that we're able to give with this mental health practitioner. So I think that obviously there is, a need for certain instances where people need to be offered medical solution or options there. But I think that this is really difficult to say, put like a cost value, I suppose, on, with the budget in mind around the prescribing, what the impact is. But I would say that there definitely has been a positive impact there. I think the practitioner takes an approach kind of working with the patient, and I think the medicalized solution is definitely not necessarily the first port of call when they're working with somebody that come into practice.
Yeah, I mean that the kind of data that you're probably looking for might be more long term, and as you said, you've only been able to trial in one practice rather than preferred 3, so it's quite a small database. Thank you for that, Judith.
Thank you. I've just come in support of this agenda item, and I do wonder about if you're asking the psychology team are using patient outcome measures to review the efficacy of the treatment that the patients are receiving. I would suspect from working and leading along with psychology across that there would be that data available. It hasn't been captured here.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. There will be some evaluation of this primary care project, will there?
There is, yes.
Yeah, good. Thanks for that. John.
Yeah, thanks, and really interesting presentation. And I would be very interested to see greater evaluation of this, because everything that you said in that presentation makes complete sense to me. And one of the things that kind of worried me a little bit was the concern about funding, both in terms of the pilot and potentially in terms of moving forward. If we could get some really good data, I figure as a board, we should be looking to see, do we need to find some more money for this? Not sure quite where we find it. I mean, Paul's there nodding. Paul, you can look down the back of your sofa. But it does strike me that this is a massively important issue. And if we're looking at a whole system approach, you could get savings in the wider system and get better patient outcomes potentially. So I wouldn't want folk to kind of despair that there isn't going to be money available. If we can get some good evaluation, I think we should be looking to find it. Can we find some more money?
Yeah. Ali.
Yeah, thanks for those comments. I would totally agree with the sort of early intervention prevention approach. Obviously, that does bring with it whole system benefits. And then again, it's really difficult to quantify. We looked at ways of doing this, and you can loosely, if you're talking about time for the patient coming in the practice, to put a cost value to that. But it's really difficult because you can never predict what the interactions are going to be going forward with people that are coming in. Especially with mental health, there's reoccurring issues, etc. But I think, no, you're definitely right. And I think that when we initially started planning the pilot, we had, I think we had about 90% of all the GP practices note an interest. They wanted to have the pilot run in their practice, and I think that just probably shows that, from a frontline perspective, that the real need for something like this, obviously because they're having such a high occurrence of people coming into their practices with mental health issues, especially exacerbated after the pandemic, as I say.
Thanks for that. And just as a follow-up, if we were able to find some more money and we were able to roll this out more broadly, would we have any recruitment challenges? So, I mean, clearly, if they're not, there is a shortage of GPs in Grampian. But if these folk, if the mental health practitioners here are not GPs, do we have a sense that we could actually recruit the right folk?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. Obviously, recruitment's always difficult in the Northeast for some reason, because I think it's a brilliant place to live and work. But I think that we didn't have any struggles recruiting our practitioner, and we did have a couple of other people as well lined up. As I say, we'd originally had planned for 2 other practices. We were not able to move forward with those, obviously. I can't say for definite, but I know that this is a very attractive post for various different reasons from a practitioner's perspective. So I think that we would definitely be able to move forward with our original plan of having the other 2 practices come online in different localities, so we can prove the model in some of the different localities across the city. And then further afield, I would just say that there are a couple of practices within Aberdeen that they've directly recruited a mental health practitioner, or someone that's working loosely in the guise of a mental health practitioner. The model might be slightly different, but to all intents and purposes, it's to address the same sort of problem. So these people are out there.
Thanks.
Thank you. So what happens next, Ali?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I mean, ideally speaking, we had planned, obviously, as I say, to roll the pilot out. I think we're at a point now with this project where we've proven the model successful, and moving forward, like you say, the evaluation will be quite important to sort of demonstrate the system-wide benefits that we've had from this project. So for me, that'll be the next point. The important point is to get the evaluation done and make sure it's yeah.
Good. So where will you report back to?
Yeah, so Yeah. So initially we'll report back within the team, and then obviously we've got a project group at the moment, and I'm not sure exactly from there on who needs to go in front of after that. I'd probably be taking direction from Kevin Dawson or yeah.
Okay. Thanks for that, because we'll want an update in due course. Thank you very much. Thank you for the presentation. Do we have a further presentation?
Yeah, so we have another presentation on frailty, and I think Amy, Amy, are you going to start us off with that?
Yep, I will also share some slides, so I'll just do that just now. Hopefully everybody can see those.
Yes.
Yeah. Just checking the time. So good morning, everyone. My name's Amy Richer. I am a program manager, transformation program manager within Alison's team, strategy and transformation. Our presentation this morning is around the frailty pathway across NHS Grampian. I'm joined by Julie Warrender, who's Deputy Chief Nurse, and she'll be taking over from me partway through this presentation to look at some of the more specifics around successes and challenges within the frailty pathway. I do have a range of slides, but I will talk through them, so there shouldn't be anything that's not covered. Hopefully if they move. There we go. So just by way of context, the Frailty Pathway programme is something that came out originally from the work of the Operation at Home First, which was an approach to delivery sort of mid-pandemic, which brought the various partnerships within NHS Grampian together to look at how we mobilise and make sure that we're doing everything we can to support people across Grampian. The programme of work itself had an initial focus around redesign of treatment for older adults with frailty, specifically around designing within Ward 102, and Aberdeen City taking on the hosted arrangements for that and for the geriatrician service in Ward 102. And I'll go on to the next slide to just kind of show some of the associated work that came out of that. Just for context in relation to Alison's previous update on the report, so the frailty pathway itself is the KPS 13 on the delivery plan, and there's the update there on page 141. As I go through, we will also reference hospital at home, which is itself has its own part on our delivery plan under KPS 12. As you'll see, a huge amount of the work that our hospital at home team do is to meet the needs of those with frailty, but they have a wider remit. So it's just kind of bearing that context in mind. Shall move on. So just to give some overview of the frailty pathway principles. So our intention as a partnership and within our wider partnerships within NHS Grampian is looking at a home first model. As we say, the original frailty pathway came from Operation Home First, and the aim is that the system works to keep people at home as a default and support them to return home as soon as possible. So our kind of key developments through frailty and frailty within hospital at home are an element of that. It's taking a whole system approach, so it's looking at cooperation and coordination across agencies. Again, in the first instance, the work around the frailty pathway took a lot of work between Aberdeen City and Aberdeen Shire partnerships to work together to look at that redesign, what community supports can be developed to meet the needs of those with frailty within Aberdeen City and Shire specifically, because Ward 102 was meeting those needs. But it's always been looked at alongside Murray Partnership, and as I get towards the end of this, we'll discuss how we're kind of doing that going forward. The other element of our principles is around acting early. So it's looking at identifying the needs early, making sure that we can support comprehensive geriatric assessment early, and looking at our step up care and discharge to home. So as June mentioned earlier around step up pathways, that continues to be a priority element within the frailty pathway work. I'll briefly go over the model as it is now, and then I'll hand over to Julie, who'll be able to provide some more context to this for you. But at the moment, the frailty pathway consists of a hybrid model, so it has both inpatient and community-based services, and these can look different across Grampian, as we have obviously different demographics and different challenges within our three partnership areas. So within our hosted service within Aberdeen City, we have the geriatric assessment unit within Ward 102, we have the links unit, and we host the consultant geriatrician team themselves. And that includes our 2 whole-time equivalent geriatricians in Dr. Gray's and Elgin. Between our partnerships, so we have elements of the frailty pathway that are then delegated to Aberdeen Shire, Aberdeen City, and Moray Health and Social Care Partnerships. And just briefly touch on what that looks like in Shire and Moray. So they have their community teams and they have the community hospitals within Aberdeenshire. They are also looking at supported discharge or alternative to hospital at home model within Aberdeenshire. And again, that's something they're taking forward. So I won't spend too much time on that within a city context. Equally in Moray, they've been doing a lot of work around hospital without walls, and they have community teams that link in with Dr. Gray's in Elgin. As a city partnership, our main focus has been around the development of Rosewell House, and a huge amount of work within the frailty pathway has gone into developing that model and all the governance and required inspection and everything that went into that, and the committee will have seen various reports, and Alison alluded to the evaluation as well. And then we also have our link into community teams and our hospital at home team, and the frailty beds within that are a really key element of how we do that within the community in Aberdeen City. I'll hand over to Julie now, before I move on, in case she wants to add anything to that.
Thanks, Amy. No, I'm happy for you to move on. So the next few slides are really to give some successes and challenges that we remain to have in our pathway. Always like to start with the good news first. So we will sell some of the successes that we have and where we're at. So we started to see a reduction in admissions in 102 over the last year. We still average about 220 roughly admissions a month into those 25 beds. The majority of these admissions are coming via ED or AMIA, which is the medical receiving unit. And that would roughly be the majority come from ED. That would have a higher percentage than we see from our AMIA. We continue to have that split of Aberdeenshire and Aberdeen City admissions into that assessment unit. However, we have seen a reduction in admissions in there, as we have with Rosewell, which may well go hand in hand with what we're seeing in 102. So we've seen a 19% reduction in admissions to Rosewell over the course of the year. And again, as it's been alluded to earlier, we don't have a massive step up admission rate. We have 5%. The rest of that 95 is stepped down from our acute colleagues. So we do need to put a bit of an emphasis into how we get that step up pathway in place, and that it's a well-known pathway that can be utilised. So we are doing some work on that as it stands. Thanks, Amy. I'll move on. Rosewell, we've seen successes here that 72% of our patients have gone home, which I think is a really good success rate of discharges. And although it can feel like we do have people that wait care and long-term care, I think that element of getting people home and that reablement focus has been a real success for Rosewell. Thanks, Amy. Some of these successes and reductions are due to our consultants are able now to get down to AMIA. So GP admissions are admitted directly to AMIA. Our geriatricians go downstairs and review these patients. Some of them don't necessarily need to come to be admitted and can be discharged home or discharged back to their care home or community hospital, and don't need to be admitted to hospital. So that's been really successful. We have been able to get additional community capacity into our hospital at home service, as well as supporting Shire colleagues. And our hospital at home development continues to be ongoing. And as it stands, we've increased from 15 beds in March last year to 27 beds this year. So that has also added to our succession. And I think the relationships we're building with our Shire colleagues and with our colleagues in AMI and ED are really starting to come to fruition, and we're seeing that element of collaboration and the support that that is helping to our front door colleagues. And these are just some of the successes we're seeing from hospital at home. Certainly this is some good feedback that we've received from families and from patients who've used that service, which has shown the good work that we're doing out in the community. And that graph there tells you that our monthly admissions have increased into that service, which probably goes hand in hand with our increase in bed base. We're certainly seeing a lot of successes with that service too. Some of our challenges that we continue to manage are the capacity of our geriatricians to meet the demand that is being asked of them, and we're doing some work with our consultants to understand how we can build a workforce for the future, but also how do we redesign and how do we look at what actually requires a geriatrician and what can we use other skills for, such as NMAP consultants or AMP roles that may be able to support some of the work that they need to do. System pressures remain to be there. That's been prevalent over winter and over this year, that we are seeing increased borders across our system, which is putting added pressure onto our system and to our geriatricians. And not all parts of our pathway are fully developed across the system and across NHS Grampian, and that ties in with some of the work we're looking to do in the next steps on how we support those other parts of the system the best way we can. Thanks, Amy.
Well, back to me now. So just to give a brief overview of our future priorities and then our planning that's underway in terms of how we take these forward in a Grampian-wide approach. So as Julie mentioned, our workforce, particularly our geriatrician workforce, will be a key priority in terms of how do we ensure that they are best placed to support people across Grampian, and that potentially we have other roles which can support them. I'll talk about it a wee bit, but we had a recent workshop with our colleagues across Grampian partnerships, looking at how we can kind of take a Grampian-wide approach to development of skills, and understanding of what skills are required to meet the needs longer term. So that's a key priority. Our hospital-based frailty within Ward 102 and within Dr. Gray's, and how we continue to support them to meet the needs of patients, will continue to be a priority. Step up and step down pathways. So within a city context, that will be around Rosewell, and how do we look at developing particularly our step up pathway, but also looking to our partners and how we support them in Shire and Murray at looking at models, and equally learning perhaps from what they're already doing to support us in taking that forward. Our alternatives to hospital, again, that for us in city is hospital at home, but may not be for our partners. And again, looking at how we can make sure that we can establish a consistency of approach to supporting people across Grampian. And finally, community and prevention approaches to frailty. So we've obviously had presentations from Ian and Jade this morning around our locality planning and how we support people in communities around prevention. And certainly from a frailty perspective, it would be looking at what are the key downstream frailty approaches we would like to see in place to minimise the impact for older people going forward. And finally, I've got some lovely pictures of our partners in Shire, Murray and City at our workshop on a very hot Friday afternoon 2 weeks ago. In Inverurie, we came together to look at the delivery plan obviously makes reference to us moving into phase 2 of the frailty pathway, and that's very much us looking at how we can take a Grampian-wide approach to meeting the needs of people, but specifically how do we support one another to share learning, to develop approaches which are obviously of benefit, and to make sure that people across Grampian have somewhat consistency of support from geriatricians as well. So we have reviewed our frailty pathway as it is. We're developing a revised programme plan which looks at those specific priorities in the previous slide, but also needed to sense check that again with our partners to make sure that there's not something that we are missing. And certainly the learning aspect was a key thing that came out at our workshop. How do we share the learning? How do we link in with one another? I think the delivery plan references that we were not successful in a bid to be part of the Frailty Pathway HIS programme in Aberdeen City, but our partners in Moray were. So how do we make sure that we can still link in with them around that work and the learning that they're involved in? And I think, as you can see, everybody's looking very jolly in this in these photos, but there's a real keenness to work together to do this, seeing the priority of some of the challenges we have with frailty, but also the benefit of making sure that our older people are well supported going into the future. So we are continuing to develop that. Our revised programme plan will go around our partners again, and we'll look at our kind of governance approaches around that as well to make sure that we've got all that in hand. So there'll be further updates within the delivery plan updates that you'll see coming forward, but hopefully that provides a bit of context to the frailty pathway as it is just now. We're happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you very much. That was really helpful. A lot of really useful information there. Thank you. Thank you very much. Could I just ask just a quick question about hospital at home? What's the turnover like there? Would patients tend to be long term, or is there more fluctuation with shorter hospital at home interventions? What's the situation there?
Yes, I'm happy to answer that. Yeah, they would have very fluctuating. They tend not to keep people for longer than a maximum of 2 weeks. And right. we certainly try to prioritise anybody that is requiring care. At the end of that, we try and prioritise that care they can get that in place so they can discharge that patient. Yep.
Right. Okay. It seems to be an important part in the structure, in the overall structure of pathways, and there was mention there of income that the pathways are not complete, so there are obviously going to be other actions that will be needed. Thanks for that, John.
Yeah, likewise, thanks. Just a couple of quick ones. Amy, I think you mentioned HES programme. Can you remind me what that is?
So it's Healthcare Improvement Scotland have a specific frailty programme that they welcomed bids to, and our colleagues in Moray were successful, but we weren't. They were limited in how many people they could have. But I think, yeah, really useful that we can still link in with them around the work that comes out of that, and they're quite keen to share that with us.
Thanks for that. And I feel I ought to know the answer to this question, but hospital to home, I think we've been looking to expand capacity. I just wondered where we were on that.
So they've just started to look at taking respiratory patients in, and they're keen to set up respiratory, and I think they're doing some work with cardiology as well. So coming into winter, they're hoping to have expanded out with frailty to have some respiratory and cardiology patients.
Thanks for that. And I gotta say, thanks again. Another good presentation.
Thank you. That was really informative. So that's the presentations. We therefore will move on. We move on to the next item of business, which is 6.4, which is Justice Social Work Delivery Plan update.
Hi, Yeah, I'll start it. So this
Okay.
report is basically to provide an update on the Justice Social Work delivery plan. So this was a 3-year plan for Justice Social Work. So this just gives you an annual update covering the progress and operational activity across the past year in Justice Social Work. I mean, it's quite comprehensive in terms of the update, the work that's been done. A lot of it was obviously focusing on COVID recovery and the backlog from courts. So huge amount of work that's been done over the past year. The plan does run out in 2024, so we will be starting to refresh our next 3-year delivery plan, and it's quite timely because it sits obviously with our new strategic plan for the partnership, but also with the refresh of the local outcome improvement plan and also the new improvement framework for community justice. So that's going to give us some different indicators, national indicators this year. So we will start working on it. But Liz, I don't know if you wanted to say anything else, but we're happy to take any questions.
No, nothing to add. Claire, it's just the annual update, so happy to answer any questions.
Yep, it's a very helpful report. I think it's comprehensive. There's mention of remand figures being very high, and I mean that will impose quite considerable resource pressures, will it not? Is that, I mean, is that, well, it will be manageable, I'm sure, but the pressures will be there nonetheless.
Yeah, the remand figures are quite, and this is a national issue. It's not by any means a Grampian thing, and this is the fallout from the pandemic. And if we think about, you know, the prison population is high anyway, but those in remand have you know, increased dramatically over COVID. And not only did they increase, but the length of time they were on remand has increased significantly. So you've actually got people on remand for quite a considerable length of time. We have got a focus with the bail supervision to try and reduce that areas of demand. And to try and reduce the areas of demand going into prison, but also to try and give an alternative to remand. So keeping prison and remand for those who absolutely cause a risk to the public, quite appropriately, they should be on remand. But for others, when we can offer an alternative, quite a structured bail supervision through social work. So we are working closely with sheriffs and the court to try and reduce that remand, but it is an issue right across the country.
Yeah, I can see that. Those alternatives, the diversions from prosecution, they will all help to take some of the pressure off. So they are useful options, but
yeah, we have done a lot of work in the city to try and increase our diversions, and again, you know, working with the Crown Office to put in and give them some assurance that we've got some programmatic work that we can do through diversion. So trying to divert people away and helps also clear the backlog, but it's also better to keep people out of the justice system. Yeah. So we did a lot of work taking in different offences and offering, so for the lower level, and I say lower level in terms of the tariff of offences, but domestic abuse, maybe lower level, doing a Caledonian adapted programme for diversion and you know, the kind of other offences such as sexual offences and stuff that you would never have had on diversion before, but as I say, really mild, but less serious ones. So trying to really encourage and work with the PFs in terms of increasing our diversion. So and looking at our capacity in social work to have the capacity to work with people on bail supervision and diversion, as well as the huge influx of people coming on orders or coming on release licenses. So, but yeah, so there's been a lot of work, Chair.
Yeah, obviously it's far more sensible to avoid the formal legal system, the prosecutions and so forth. So Caledonian system, that's helpful. These are, in the grand scale of things, relatively small scale. The more that we have of that, the better. But that's very much kind of a national strategy issue. So that's good. Hussein, you want to come in?
Sorry,
Hussein.
rookie mistake, talking to myself. Thank you very much for the report. It was just to say, could you maybe just give us some narrative around trends in terms of demand for the service, point one, and point two, do you see any challenges coming down the pipeline over and above the overall pressures on the system, I guess, would be point two. Thank you.
I'll let Liz come in terms of the demand. I suppose.
I mean, demand is probably not the right word.
Yeah,
in the right context.
Yeah. Do you
mean
mean in
uptake,
terms of the
utilization?
the volume of people that are going through court and committing offences? Okay, so I don't have any trend data on that. With our performance framework, the next time that's coming to the next committee, we will be able to show the volume that's coming into justice social work at the moment, because obviously things had reduced when the courts were closed. They're trying to still clear that backlog. They're doing a lot of virtual courts. So we're starting to see a real increase in virtual court appearances as they cleared the backlog of cases. But also we're starting to see that increase in community payback orders, increase in sentences, and obviously the demands that we've spoken about. But there is going to be a lot of data that's coming to the next one in our performance framework. But in terms of the demand of offending in Grampian, I think we've not seen a huge increase in the demand, but it's certainly something I could try. I'll get hold of some of the Grampian figures. It's difficult to do it on a city basis, but the Grampian figures absolutely, we can try and show that when we come to the next committee.
Yeah. Just to put that into context, to avoid any, I realise that's probably an alarming question to ask, and I could have phrased it better, Chair. My apologies for that. And the reason for me asking that question was to link that to obviously the ability to respond, and then that to the second half of my question, which was the challenges and the ability to respond over the long term, and the potential implications that might come with that, and any support that the services may be needing coming down the pipeline. So that's to link the two bits of the question together.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Hussein. And through yourself, Chair. So in terms of the demand coming in, we did get some additional funding. So justice social work is very different in terms of the other funding for the Health and Social Care Partnership. So it's ring-fenced funding, and it's very specific in terms of what we use that funding for. We did get additional money to help us with the COVID recovery, and also the increase in business or demand, whatever way you want to call it, coming into the system. So it is a yearly budget, and every year when we put back our reporting to the government, our budget's based on our activity. So it's based on the amount of orders we've got, the amount of people in prison, the amount of remands, the amount on bail supervisions, the amount of diversions. We put all of that data in, and they extrapolate that data, and they work out the funding that we're going to need for the following year as much as possible of what we're going to need to be able to deliver it. I think, as with everything else, there's financial pressures right across, and justice as well. We have to be able to deliver, because for us it's a public protection as our priority. So we are tweaking our I suppose our workforce, because the less people you get on supervision orders, and the less people on unpaid work, but you need more people to work on diversions and supervise bail. So I think it's just maybe changing the way we work a bit, trying to meet the demand that way.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much. Thanks for the report, and for all the excellent work that's reported in the update. Committee happy to note that report.
Yep.
Thank you. That takes us to our last item of business, which is the date of the next meeting, 28th of November. So thank you all colleagues for your attendance and your participation, and I look forward to seeing you at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thanks, Martin. Cheerio, folks. Take care.